come outside today to do the Spring Green book tag. Seemed appropriate with all the greenery in the background. The Spring Green book tag was created by J.D. Archer, and I first saw it on Courtney Pickle's channel, and I'll put links to both of their videos down below. The whole premise of this is just to turn BookTube green, show us what books you have that are green. And I'm surprised I had quite so many. I've only picked from the ones I've actually read, and there's still several that I haven't read yet. But the greenest one I have has got to be this one. That's The Plague by Albert Camus, a book I've had probably the longest, well over 20 years, since I used to work at B. Dalton's when I bought this, because it was just intriguing, just the stark cover of it, and the words "the plague" just sounded so ominous, and pretty much is. It's about a plague that strikes a rather large port town called Oran in northern Algiers, and it's just the effects it had on the people as they're quarantined, some separated from their families, some that are trapped outside the quarantine, or visitors that were in town at the time when the quarantine hits, and it's just sort of their personal stories told from the point of view from the doctor looking after the residents. Next up is one of my favorites. This is a classic Gothic story called Dolly, a ghost story by Susan Hill. Really small little edition. I've got several books in this same style and format by this author. And it's about two cousins that when they were younger, I think they went to stay or just visit their aunt's house. And Leonora, the girl, wanted desperately this one particular doll, kind of a princess-type doll. She had a little image of what it should look like, and instead she ends up getting this china-faced doll here, which she just goes into this rage, throws it up against the wall, the face cracks, and her anger is just totally uncontrollable, and somehow it unleashes some sort of evil. We don't know if it's unleashed from the doll or from the house, and then years later the two cousins meet up again at the house and sort of end up reconnecting with this evil spirit that seems to be around. The third book I have is by Nancy Springer. This is one of her books in the Enola Holmes mystery series. It's The Case of the Bizarre Bouquets. And Enola Holmes is the younger sister of Sherlock and Mycroft Holmes, I believe just invented by Nancy Springer here. And these are just really great series, great mystery series. Very well written. I just love the character of Enola Holmes. She's very independent, even though young. And if you think of her first name, Enola, alone, she does very well alone and on her own. But really, really great mysteries. I highly recommend this series, and there's like a whole slew of 6 of them right there. Next is another series. This is by Chris Colfer, and this is the first one in the series. It's The Land of Stories, The Wishing Spell. It's sort of a blue-green, but it's still predominantly green. And it's sort of just a retelling of your classic fairy tales with all the princesses now turned queens in their own little lands, ruling over their own little portions of the land of stories. One of these, I forget which one of these had like a map in it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so you have the Sleeping Kingdom, the Northern Kingdom, etc. And these are just a lot of fun to read. I still haven't quite finished the series, but I will eventually. And then a book I just read recently this year, Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. Classic story. A man who gets shipwrecked and is stranded on an island for like 26 years, believing he's the only one on the island until he sees a footprint. No chapters within this book. I talked about it recently in a wrap-up. It's sort of a bit of a diary-type format where he's just discussing like what he had to do to kind of stay alive and create shelters and find, and grow food, because he didn't know how long he would be there or if he'd permanently be there, and also shelter from any, either natives of the island or wild beasts and things that might be roaming around. So, and overall it was okay, but it wasn't quite the desperate survival book that I thought it was going to end up being. It seemed like he was very resourceful and had built himself quite the lovely shelter and everything, so I don't know, it was kind of hit or miss with me on that one. And then next is I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. Well-known book. I've been wanting to read this for quite some time. Very green, as you can see. And it's sort of a coming-of-age story of this young woman finding love for the first time, learning to be a writer like her father was. He doesn't seem to be able to get any motivation or any inspiration to write anything, and so she sets off to try and follow in her father's footsteps and become a famous writer. And maybe help make some money for the family because they're kind of sliding down into poverty, but I really enjoyed this story, and yeah, highly recommend that one. Just 2 more here. This is a first book in a children's series that I absolutely adore. This is Theodosia and the Serpents of Chaos by R.L. Lefevre's. This is about this young woman here named Theodosia. She is the daughter of two parents that own kind of an antiquities museum, and they're constantly bringing back different things that they uncover. And she seems to have this ability to detect evil within these things, like mummies or staffs or things like that, that in this case is, oh, this is the serpents. The second book is the Staff of Osiris. But she's able to detect these evil within these objects and perform spells and things to kind of rid them of that before evil befalls the rest of the family. And her parents are kind of unaware of anything that she's doing. But there's also kind of a band of criminals that are trying to get these objects before she can kind of get the evil out of them, so they can use them and control them and, you know, do evil deeds with them. But these are just a really great series. I absolutely adore it. I think there's like 4 out. I don't know if the series might be finished the way they left the last one. It's very possible they could have just concluded it, but I'm kind of hoping they don't, because I really do enjoy them. And the very last one really needs no introduction or explanation. I think everyone's grown up with this story, and it's The Wizard of Oz. By L. Frank Baum, in a very, very green cover, beautifully illustrated. It's like the children's leather-bound editions. I absolutely adore these. And this is color photos, illustrations. Yes, there's real photos of the Scarecrow and Tin Man. Yes, illustrations. And it's just really, really beautiful. And she comes to realize, of course, there's no place like home. So that's the Spring Green book tag and my selection of green books. If you guys like to do it, consider yourself tagged, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.